Hi folks, this is Mayhem here today bringing you another comic book-based article refutation. This one coming to us from CBR.com. I'll link it down below. But the title of this article is Big Bad, 15 Villains Who Could Replace Thanos After MCU's Infinity War. Of course, if you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and how could you not be, we've been seeing Thanos pulling the strings from behind the scenes ever since we caught our first glimpses of him in the first Avengers movie. And it's all been leading up and building up to Avengers Infinity War, where all the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy will be coming together to fight Thanos. And possibly, presumably, that after the conclusion of that movie, Thanos will either be killed or somehow removed from play, and they may potentially need a new big bad villain to be the next major threat moving forward beyond Infinity War. So CBR.com here has given a rundown of 15 potential villains who could potentially take his place as that big bad. Now, as I was scanning through this, I only really found maybe 3 of these characters to be really viable potential big bad villains, and I feel that a lot of the rest of them had problems for one reason or another, and I just sort of wanted to run down these, give my thoughts on each one of their entries as a potential next big bad. So let's waste no time, dive right into it. At number 15, they have put up Ultron. Well, my problem with this should be obvious. We've already seen Ultron in Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, and the Avengers defeated him. Now, in the comics, of course, Ultron is an ever-present threat. He keeps coming back again and again and again. He's one of the Avengers' most consummate and recurring villains. But in terms of the movie universe, I'm just like, well, you know, there's a lot of other characters we need to explore, and let's not go where we've already gone before. I think that would kind of turn off a lot of general audiences if Ultron was made the next big bad. So you kind of go Avengers. The first Avengers had Loki backed by Thanos, and then the second one was Ultron, and then now the third one, Infinity War, is going to be Thanos. And then after that, we go back to Ultron. It's like, are we just going to keep bouncing back between the same 2 main baddies? Because Thanos was really pulling the strings in the first one, then Ultron, then back to Thanos. We're going to go back to Ultron. I really don't see that being a likelihood for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I don't really see them doing that, even though Ultron himself is clearly a major threatening character. Moving on to number 14. Their 14 leaves a lot to be desired. It's MODOK. MODOK is an acronym for Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. He's created by the science group AIM, which we've already seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They were the people behind Iron Man 3, all of the soldiers who could turn hot and had superhuman powers. It was AIM who were in charge of all of them and created the technology to create those soldiers. Well, MODOK in the comics is sort of the head of AIM. And sorry, but more or less he's a joke in the comics. He is superhumanly smart, he has psychic powers and everything, but he's really just this bulbous-headed monstrosity with weak little arms and legs sitting on a floating chair, and you know, he's not particularly a great strategist, even though he's very highly intelligent, and that's really tends to be his downfall. He's scientifically a genius, sure, but he's very bad in strategy, and he's never really been a big consummate threat, even though he keeps popping up. A lot of times the Avengers just sort of regard him as a joke of a character who's not really that dangerous and threatening. And by the way, haven't we already seen what happens in the movies when we make our big bad character a mutated, bulbous-headed monstrosity with psychic powers? I'm pretty sure we've seen that somewhere. Where have we seen that? Where did it go so wrong before in the movie-verse? Ah, well. So then moving on to 13, we have Dormammu. Now, Dormammu is a very threatening character, sure. Incredibly powerful character, sure. Problem here being that, again, just like Ultron, we've already seen him. We've not only already seen him, he's already been defeated. Doctor Strange. In the Doctor Strange movie, Dormammu, of course, was the giant floating head creature at the end of it that Doctor Strange managed to single-handedly, by himself, sort of defeat. sort of defeat in terms of tricking him and having to eventually make a deal with him for Dormammu to stay away from Earth. Now, basically, the problem here being is that, you don't really need anybody but Doctor Strange to fight Dormammu. In the comics, Doctor Strange was always the one who sort of single-handedly defeated Dormammu. Despite all of Dormammu's massive power, and yes, he is massively powerful, he never really was a big Avengers villain or Avengers threat. A couple times, every once in a while, sure, he's popped up to give a challenge to the Avengers. But he's never really been a massive Avengers mobilizing threat to the Earth. It's really always been Doctor Strange is the only one you've needed to take care of him. And again, do they really want to be treading where they've already gone in the Doctor Strange movie, moving forward for the next Avengers big baddie? I don't think so. I think they need some new villainous blood. Which brings us to number 12, and the first entry on the list that I actually think is a good, viable choice for a potential villain moving forward. And it's Mephisto. Mephisto, the extra-dimensional creature who takes on the form of demons, and in the Marvel Universe, it's even arguable that our conception of Satan comes from Mephisto. Incredibly powerful, incredibly intelligent, and a great trickster kind of a character. However, there are some problems associated with him as a potential big baddie. Number one being that Mephisto, the character that is most commonly associated with Mephisto, is Ghost Rider. Now, we already have Ghost Rider in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because he's been a prominent player in the most recent season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So we already have Ghost Rider if we want to bring Mephisto into it. However, the small screen and the big screen Marvel Cinematic Universe have always had a pretty large gulf between them. Now, I could see potentially Mephisto factoring into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ghost Rider's inclusion there. I kind of don't see them bringing the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ghost Rider into the movies and then having Mephisto equally come into the movies as well. So I really kind of see Mephisto as more of a small screen kind of a major threat that could play through an entire season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., more so than I see him a viable choice for the movies as the next big bad. Also, another thing is, when it comes to the big bad for the movies and for the Avengers, I think it needs to be a character who can be as easily rooted in science as he can be in magic. Because you need a character that somebody like, Tony Stark and the technically minded characters of the Avengers can sort of wrap their heads around. And the more magical you get, the more it kind of goes out the window in terms of the high-tech kind of characters who we see so much of in the Avengers. So I think a character like Thanos works very well because he's an alien, so we can see him through a scientific lens, but he also has, the power of the Infinity Gems, and is that magic-based power? It can kind of maybe be seen as magic. And so, you can kind of look at him from either angle, magic or science. Or both, if you want to, because, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing that, claiming that Thor and the Asgardians are both magic and science. But Mephisto just seems a little too sort of old-world, demon, religious bent to the character for the Avengers. Moving then on to the next character on the list, number 11, Morgan Le Fay. Well, same kind of problem in terms of only being magic-based. Morgan Le Fay is a sorceress. She is purely magic-based. She seems like she would be more of a good villain for Doctor Strange, the next solo Doctor Strange movie, more so than an Avengers villain. Because even though she's been a problem for the Avengers a time or two in the past, since she is totally magic-based, her interest tends to go more towards magical interest. She's always looking to acquire more magical power and to disrupt the magical realms and to cause problems with the magic that exists on Earth. Well, that's not really the Avengers' purview. They don't really delve into the magic aspects of the world too much. That's what Doctor Strange does. He's the Sorcerer Supreme. So you want to have Morgan Le Fay as the primary villain for the next solo Doctor Strange movie? I'm all for it. as the big bad who's going to be razzling the Avengers for at least the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if not further than that, I don't really see that being a likelihood. The next inclusion on the list, number 10, is the Leader. Well, one of the problems I have with the Leader's inclusion on this list is that we've already seen the Leader in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Samuel Stearns from the Incredible Hulk movie, the second movie to ever be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was the guy played by Tim Blake Nelson who kind of worked with samples of Bruce Banner's blood and figured out a way to give gamma-based powers to other people based on Bruce Banner's blood. And then the last we see of him, he gets a head injury, some of that tainted gamma blood leaks into his head, and we see his head start to sort of grow and mutate. Well, the Leader in the comics, that's what his power is. He has a gamma-irradiated body, but instead of gaining physical strength like the Hulk did, he grows a larger brain and becomes super intelligent. Well, there's a lot of the same problems that we have with MODOK is true of the Leader. Yes, he is a scientific genius, no doubt, but he's oftentimes regarded as a little bit of a joke as well in terms of he's not a very capable strategist, and a lot of his plans are more or less easily defeated by the Hulk because they're not really well-constructed plans in the first place. He's also a character who has great delusions of grandeur. He tends to think of himself as far more capable and far more dangerous than he actually is, and he's never really been a major threat to the Avengers at all. Really, he's been somebody who annoys the Hulk, and the Hulk defeats him every time. So, sure, almost any of these characters could be revamped and made more dangerous in the cinematic universe, but when it comes back to the comic versions of them, if you're wanting to stay at all true to the comic versions, the Leader and MODOK and a few other characters on this list are mostly regarded as kind of jokes by a lot of the Avengers. The next entry on the list, number 9, Living Tribunal. Now, certainly here we have a character who definitely has the clout to be a major player and a major big baddie. As a matter of fact, in the entirety of the Marvel Universe, it is arguable that the Living Tribunal is the most powerful being we have ever actually seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Second only to the famed One Above All, who I don't think we've ever actually seen that character. It's just essentially the Marvel Universe's conception of God, who is sometimes spoken of, but never seen. So aside from the One Above All, the Living Tribunal is potentially the most powerful being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In fact, when Adam Warlock had the Infinity Gauntlet, the thing that Thanos is now trying to assemble, and it's supposed to make you a god, the most powerful being in the universe, the Living Tribunal was able to stalemate Adam Warlock when he had the Infinity Gauntlet. So basically, everything that Thanos is trying to become in the movies, the Living Tribunal already is. He already has all of that level of power. Now, the downside of Living Tribunal as a potential big baddie for the MCU is that the Living Tribunal is not a bad guy. He's not a villainous character at all. He's called the Living Tribunal because he is essentially the great cosmic judge. He judges the issues that the cosmic beings are engaged in. So anytime eternity or infinity or death or Galactus or the Celestials, all these massively powerful cosmic beings have issues, they bring them before the Living Tribunal. The Living Tribunal judges them. Now, it could be said that maybe the Living Tribunal decides that Earth needs to be destroyed because it's too great of a threat to the rest of the universe. But ultimately, you're not going to be able to fight the Living Tribunal, nor would you even want to. All you would really need to do is make a strong case for the Earth needing to survive. All you'd really have to do is convince him. And he'd be open to listening to that because, again, he's a judge. He doesn't have any malice towards the Earth. He doesn't have any malice towards anyone or anything. So really, you just need a good lawyer, essentially. Somebody who can make a good argument, and you'd be able to convince him to not destroy the Earth. So, definitely has the power. Don't really see him as being a character who would fit into the role of a big bad, of a major villain. So now we move on to number 8 on the list. It's Enchantress. Enchantress, the Asgardian sorceress who has been in love with Thor and has been a huge thorn in his side because he never returned her affections. Now this seems like a character who would be good for a solo Thor movie, because in terms of power, she's not really any more powerful than, say, Loki, in terms of being able to wield Asgardian magic. Now we've already seen the Avengers defeat Loki. Do we really want to rehash that with another Avengers movie where the Avengers are clashing with an Asgardian magic user? And that was when Loki had the backing of Thanos and the Chitauri army at his disposal. Enchantress wouldn't even have that. So it would essentially be a step down from the first Avengers movie. And, these movies are supposed to be ramping up. They're supposed to be getting more and more difficult each time. We'd be going all the way back to square one if Enchantress became our main villain. So I don't think that's a viable character for the big bad. Certainly, if they wanted to do a Thor number 4, she could be a main villain there. The next entry on the list, number 7, is Blackheart. Now, Blackheart is the spawn, the offspring of Mephisto. So everything that applied to Mephisto applies to Blackheart in terms of, yes, he's a very powerful character, and yes, a very evil character, but he's mostly based in demonic magic, and again, just like with Mephisto, I don't see the next major bad guy villain for the Avengers being someone who is so steeped in seemingly religious mythology and magic, and having no basic science background to it. Can't really even view Blackheart through a scientific lens, or at least it would be very difficult to, I would think. So yeah, and this is another character that is very closely tied to Ghost Rider and maybe would better play into the small screen villain for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I could maybe even potentially see Blackheart being kind of a character who the Defenders could face. But I don't necessarily see him as being a big bad for the Avengers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Number 6 is Molecule Man. Here we've got a potential major baddie because Molecule Man has amazing powers, incredible reality-altering powers, and while Molecule Man is not necessarily villainous in terms of, he's not really malicious, he's absolutely crazy. Completely insane, and doesn't always have the greatest control of his powers, certainly doesn't have the greatest control of his mind. So here we have a character who could potentially make for a very prominent threat to the Avengers. The only problem I have here is that I like my villains dastardly. I like my big bad villains to be intelligent, mastermind kind of characters who really have a plan and have the desire to see it through. I'm not too keen on your main villain being somebody who's just completely out of their mind and really just sort of reacting to things as their crazy brain happens to react to them in the moment. I like my villains to be more methodical, and especially if you're dealing with a big bad type character, especially if you're dealing with somebody who you want to be your major villain, I think it needs to be somebody who's intelligent and methodical, not necessarily somebody who's just out of their mind. So maybe potentially Molecule Man as a secondary villain, somebody who the main villain is manipulating and controlling to a certain degree, and using Molecule Man's powers to affect and attack the Avengers. But I don't really see him as being your main villain. Moving on, we're into the top 5. Number 5, Trico-Slatterus. If you're unfamiliar with the name, Trico-Slatterus is more commonly known as the Champion. And he's one of the Elders of the Universe, which certainly plays into the Marvel Cinematic Universe because we've already seen at least one of the Elders of the Universe, and that's the Collector, played by Benicio del Toro. And we're going to be seeing another Elder of the Universe in the upcoming Thor movie, and that's going to be the Game Master, and that's going to be played by Jeff Goldblum. So Tricos Laterus is known as the Champion, and he's another Elder of the Universe, which means he's one of the oldest living beings in the universe, and each one of the Elders of the Universe have one specific area of interest that gives them their name and that they spend all their time doing. So obviously the Collector collects things. The Game Master, the Grandmaster, he creates games. And for the Champion, Tricos Laterus, he goes around trying to see if anybody can best him in battle. So his entire life is spent trying to find someone who can beat him in a one-on-one fight. So he certainly has the power. As a matter of fact, he could probably go toe-to-toe with the Hulk. He could certainly go toe-to-toe with Thor or any of the Avengers. So he could certainly put up a fight. Downside of Tricos Laterus as a potential villain is that, much like the Living Tribunal, he's not really a villain. He's not malicious. He has no ill will towards Earth or anyone on it. And as a matter of fact, his first appearance, when he abducted some of Earth's heroes trying to find somebody who could fight him and defeat him, he ended up fighting the Thing, Ben Grimm. And he was able to defeat the Thing. As a matter of fact, the Thing kept trying to come back and get back up and fight him, and the Champion just kept knocking him down. But the Thing actually gained his respect because Ben Grimm refused to stay down. He kept getting back up and he kept saying, I'm going to keep fighting, because that's what we humans do, essentially. And so he gained the Champion's respect, and the Champion basically forfeited, said, I can't defeat you, I can beat your body, but I can't beat your spirit. And so he has sort of a grudging respect for Earth and humanity. So he's not really a bad guy, nor is he particularly a methodical guy. Of all of the Elders of the Universe, he's probably the least intelligent. He's not really a planner or a schemer. He just likes a straightforward, straight-up fight. He's very honorable, and again, not villainous at all. So I really don't see him as being somebody who's going to be a big bad, a major threat to the Avengers and to Earth. All you really need to do is find somebody who can give him a solid fight, and I could imagine that even though he might be able to beat the Hulk or Thor, that either one of them could give him the fight that he wants, and then he'd be happy and he'd go away. Number 4. Now this is one I absolutely agree with and probably would get my top vote for the most likely next big bad, and this is the Beyonder. The Beyonder is what happens when a cosmic cube gains sentience and becomes an actual being of immense power, godlike power, in fact. In fact, a Beyonder could be seen as being as powerful as the Living Tribunal, but not quite as much, or someone who wields the Infinity Gauntlet. There may be one step down from an Infinity Gauntlet wielder or the Living Tribunal. Just reality-altering powers to the extreme, godlike levels of power. And so that could certainly be somebody with the power to be a threat to the Avengers. Also, a Beyonder, because there's not just one, any cosmic cube that gains sentience is effectively a Beyonder. And so you could have different ones of different temperaments and different plans. So you could certainly easily make a Beyonder who, for whatever reason, wants to destroy Earth. And that would certainly be a big-time major challenge for the Avengers to overcome. So I don't have any problems with that one. That would absolutely be my choice for the next big bad. And it ranked as number 4 on the list. I certainly would have put that at number 1. So top 3 now. At number 3, they have the Red Skull. Now, they put the Red Skull on the list because we don't really know what's happened to the Red Skull in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At the end of the first Captain America movie, we saw the Tesseract sort of disintegrate and seemingly transport the Red Skull somewhere else in the cosmos. We don't know where, we don't know what happened. So of course it's possible that he could come back with some kind of grand cosmic power. Maybe he's harnessed the power of the cosmic cube, because in the comics, the Red Skull has managed to do that more than once, harness the power of a cosmic cube, and use it to really cause some major problems for the Avengers. Now, he certainly fits the bill of being villainous, malicious, dastardly, a mastermind, and if he had the power of a cosmic cube, he could certainly fit every one of the bills necessary for a big bad. My only concern here is, again, like I've stated with some of these other entries, we'd be going where we've gone before. We wouldn't be breaking any new ground or introducing any new characters. Now, that's not always a bad thing. I mean, everybody loves Loki being a consummate bad guy, and, you know, they're having the next Thor movie, and Loki's certainly going to be playing a major part in that. There are certain characters who you love to see as a villain again and again and again. How many of the X-Men movies have had Magneto as a bad guy? Practically all of them, to one degree or another. So there are certain characters who you want to see come back again and again and again. So maybe they could do it with the Red Skull. I wouldn't have a huge problem with the Red Skull being a big bad guy and returning to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I just would almost like to see fresh blood, a new villain, rather than sort of going back to where we've been before. Number 2 on the list, and after Beyonder, my second choice for the next potential big bad. It's Kang the Conqueror. As a matter of fact, I could almost maybe say I would put Kang as number 1, even above Beyonder on my list. Kang the Conqueror is a major Avengers villain, has been for many, many years, and he's such a threat because he's the master of time. He goes through time and takes technology from the far future, which makes him able to fight all of the Avengers, even though he really doesn't technically have any inherent powers of his own. But his battle suit and all of the weapons that he has taken from the future allow him to, do virtually anything. So he can certainly be a major threat, not only because of the advanced tech that he has, but also because he messes with time. He could go on a crusade to go back in time and stop the Avengers from being born, and I could certainly see a Avengers movie where they have to travel through the time stream to fight him throughout all different phases and time and everything. So Kang and maybe having a time war kind of a thing could certainly be a big bad for the Avengers to face. So Kang the Conqueror maybe even get my number 1 pick. Him or Beyonder are my main ones there. So then we come to number 1 on their list of potential big bads to replace Thanos. Number 1 is Namor. Now, I disagree with this one for a few reasons. Now, they make a good argument because Namor, the King of Atlantis, certainly has massive amount of power. He could go toe-to-toe with the Hulk. He has in the comics multiple times. And as a matter of fact, Namor is one of the few people who have fought the Hulk multiple times and has won more often than he's lost. Thor and Hulk have fought a number of times, and Hulk has won most of those fights. But between Namor and Hulk, Namor has won most of the fights. So he's certainly very, very powerful, and he has the entire Atlantean army at his disposal. So one could certainly see a potential movie where the armies of Atlantis rise up to attack the land-based, human civilizations. And that definitely being a major threat that the Avengers could face. However, my problem with Namor as a potential big bad is that Namor is not at all a villain. He certainly has a potential to be an anti-hero, and there has been times where the Atlantean army has wanted to rise up and attack the humans. But at the core of Namor, you're dealing with somebody who is an old friend of Captain America. Namor's origins go all the way back to the late 30s, actually, is when he was first created. And in the 40s, he was on the Invaders with Captain America and the Human Torch and Bucky and a number of these other characters. So even if that wasn't true in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because, we saw the first Captain America movie and we saw the Invaders. His team that he put together was the Invaders, and it even had characters that were in the original Invaders, like Union Jack was there, and Dum Dum Dugan was there. So we had some major characters, and we didn't have Namor. So fine, he wasn't a part of the Invaders in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but still, in the comics, Namor and Captain America are still to this day very tight, very close friends. There are very few people Namor regards as friends, and Captain America is one of them. So I don't think that Marvel fans would be too keen on seeing Namor going against Captain America and the Avengers. Now, if they wanted to do maybe an Avengers movie where the Atlanteans were the big threat, and maybe a usurper to the Atlantean throne kicks Namor out, because Namor's half human anyway, and says, you're not pure enough to lead us, and he wants to take over and destroy the humans. And then Namor has to team up with the Avengers in order to stop this from happening, stop this war from happening. I could certainly see that. But that's not what this is about. This is not an article saying what the next story or plot of the Avengers is going to be. It's who's going to be the next big bad. And Namor is certainly never going to be a big bad. Maybe a threat to a certain degree. Maybe certainly the Atlanteans may be a threat to a certain degree. But Namor himself will never be a big bad. As a matter of fact, I think they are still trying to work on plans for maybe a potential Namor movie in the future, with him as the protagonist. So, as much of an anti-hero as he is, as much of a sort of gruff and irritable character, grumpy kind of a guy, Namor's not a villain, and I don't think real Marvel fans would ever really accept him as such in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So really, of this list of 15, my ones that I think are actual good choices: Kang the Conqueror, the Beyonder, and maybe Mephisto. But again, Mephisto, I see him almost more as a small-scale, small-screen character. So really not a lot of characters on this list do I think are viable contenders for big bads after Thanos and the Infinity War. So what do you think about these characters? Do you think any of my arguments against them are flawed in any way? Do you think any of them would make for really good major villains for the Avengers post-Infinity War? Was there anybody who wasn't included on this list who you think would make for a great big bad moving forward? Let me know what you think down below, and thanks for listening, and I'll catch everybody next time.